It can be all too easy to fall into the trap of not good enough, not worthy.
We need these catalysts to wake us up out of the stupor of sort of the patterns that we've fallen into.
To live in scarcity and lack based on one's history, one's experiences. Each individual's path is uniquely theirs.
We can create a completely different experience for ourselves that takes us out of a tendency to be limited.
We must ask ourselves, what are we chasing and where are we going? And are we living our best lives? Or simply settling for less, waiting for someday?
Holy moly, there's so much more potential here.
Welcome. You have entered the realm of 1111 Talk Radio. Your host is Simran. It's time to discover your own language with the universe. Empower yourself, broaden your mind, open your heart, and discover who you are. Now, here's your host, Simran.
With the uncertain times that we live in and the often challenging and changing landscapes of our economics, our family lives, our social lives, our communities, it can be easy to go into places of fear, of lack, of scarcity. And money has a lot to do with that conversation. And whatever we feel and think on the inside starts to picture on the outside. We all tell ourselves stories about when we will finally feel complete, after we get the next promotion, when we pay off our debts, or once we save enough. These familiar stories become the invisible walls of our own making. But there are other stories, stories that set us free. Today, we embark on such a story. The Money Catalyst, the fast track to wealth, freedom, and living your best life. My guest today is Leisa Peterson, and she has been on before. Go back and listen to the archive of The Mindful Millionaire. It's a powerful book and a wonderful interview, and she has done it again. Another beautiful novel grounded in personal experience and in the wealth of knowledge that she has. It is called The Money Catalyst. And Leisa says, you were born for abundance, joy, and connection, nothing less than the full expression of your potential. This journey leads to something precious, the power to create the expansive, vibrant life you were always meant to live. We need only the courage and the audacity to claim them. Welcome, Leisa. I think that the conversation needs to begin with the question of not enough. And it's not just a mental thing. Oftentimes it is grounded in our bodies.
It resonates in our bodies. It shows up in our life, in our practical life with our experiences with money. And this isn't something we're making up. Like, this is something that's happening economically. When I look at the data around things like inflation and, goods being more expensive, services being more expensive, it feels like we are running a race. Oftentimes feels like we're going backwards, even though we're working really hard and we're putting ourselves out there. And I think I've been witnessing this for quite some time. It's expedited recently. We can be having a difficult experience in the outer world with money, but when we're able to tune into the inside experience of what we're having and question the assumptions of how am I approaching this situation? How am I responding to the difficulties I might be experiencing? We can create a completely different experience for ourselves that takes us out of a tendency to be limited, to be focused on what we don't have, and shift our attention to what it is that we do have and what it is that we can grow from rather than shrink away.
The Money Catalyst is very much about supporting individuals into a deeper embodiment of their abundance, their wealth, their fulfillment that their lives really hold. But so often individuals don't go past the head, the reactivity or putting it on a shelf until someday that never seems to come or seems to keep being put further and further away. It creates a sense of dullness and a lack of life and vitality within the body and within the experience. We first have to recognize that that's kind of where we are, right?
I had to go through this myself. I had to witness, even though I have been in a place of comfort. I was on a trip. I took someone to Paris as a gift for inspiring my first book. While we were there, I noticed just by being with her how I had been looking at my life and my experiences from a glass half empty, playing to not lose versus playing life to win. I had to witness it for my own self, not just my head, but my body, my feelings, my experience of what it feels to live inside of scarcity, even though I thought I had figured this out. But I went through it in a very short amount of time where perfect synchronicity of events to make me realize, holy moly, there's so much more potential here. And because you aren't in the presence of someone like my friend who I had taken to Paris, you're not noticing these patterns that you're still stuck inside of, even though you think you had this figured out. And then I was like, gosh, if I'm this person seeing this, what's it like for everybody else? Because I focus on this. Most people don't do this full time for their living. When I dove into creating this story, which is a fictional parable, and I started sharing it with other people, I was like, does this make any sense? Does this resonate with you? And sure enough, I saw that many people feel like we need these catalysts to wake us up out of the stupor of sort of the patterns that we've fallen into.
And it's a beautiful contrast in terms of their story. Even though they had similar stories about money, they ended up with two different outlooks regarding money. Speak a little bit to how we all may have very similar woundings but yet our mindsets, our approaches will then differ.
In the book, Mirabel is caught in this cycle of frugality and shrinking and being careful and watching every penny. She actually has more. That's sort of the paradox because Leela also had not come from much, but she had never created financial stability in the way that we like to think of it. And yet here she was living this life of openness and possibility and curiosity. And she wasn't constrained by these chains of scarcity. And it was shocking for Mirabel to witness it. At first, she's like, you're just being irresponsible. But then the more she leaned into it, she's like, wait a minute, what if I'm being irresponsible, not necessarily with money, but with my whole entire life? What if I'm missing my opportunity to live more fully?
I was reflecting on my own life, the zigzag experience that I have had with money throughout my life. Oftentimes, when we have a lot, then that's actually when there can be more fear or more constriction. Even though we may spend according to the amount we have, there's a fear of losing it. And when we are in these places where there's little, I have found that I actually have felt freer and more like Leela. I felt more like I was in the moment. Now, I'm not advocating for everyone to not have what they need, but I did notice that distinction. There is something about our clinging to or a fear of losing what we have that does limit that aliveness and that openness that you're speaking of.
That was my lived experience. I have to admit, because I've been focused on these questions around scarcity and abundance for 11 years now in my business, there have been numerous times where I have encountered people that I could feel were living exactly what we're talking about here, this lightness of being. They trust, that what they need is going to come in when they need it. It's not about, oh, we're better to not have it. But the question is, are we going to allow how much money we have in any given moment to dictate the whole entire experience that we have around life? And that was what I wanted to question.
How did your husband's experience help you lean more into this?
So my husband got diagnosed with cancer a few years ago. What ended up happening was we took a time out with the regular life that we had been living and reflected on like what's most important. We started reinventing after his treatments were done. We started really looking at what was most important to us. Things like travel kind of rose to the top, streamlining our life and figuring out how we didn't have to work so hard or spend so much time in work. We just started picking up aspects of our life and looking at them to say, is this bringing us happiness, or is it just, something we're doing because we're supposed to? And so Lawrence is the embodiment of, going through all of what I think Tim and I did in a very short amount of time to create more enjoyment on a daily basis, to figure out the things that weren't working for us in our relationship, at the time in my business, also in Tim's business. We just really got curious. It's like preciousness of time. We don't know how long we have. So if we live that way, are we going to make some changes? And most definitely the answer was yes. And we started making those changes. The outcome was just so much beauty and love and deepening of our relationship with each other as well as with our children. So much beauty. But I will also say that was so wild is we didn't put money as the top priority during this time. It was just sort of there. I started to notice that my perception of how much money it took to live our best life was actually far less than I would have thought. It's like just changing the mindset started opening up these levels of abundance that I wouldn't have believed was even possible unless I had been living it and noticing that we could live on a lot less than I thought. We spend on experiences versus stuff. We're very diligent about the choices that we're making about money. So those were some of the things that inspired this character, Lawrence.
The word that keeps coming to mind is surrender. When we surrender to the life that we have where we think that we can't really change anything or we're gripping too tightly, that type of surrender actually becomes what you call one of life's shadows. It then constricts us and holds us in prison. To shift into a place of surrendering that attachment to it and opening to what might hold more meaning or more fulfillment or memories or value, all of a sudden lifts our vibration and transports us to a different experience entirely, which is the journey that you take us on through Mirabel, learning about the 8 catalysts and also the awake process.
This conversation with Lawrence, I thought it was so important that he points out these normal patterns that we're all taught to think will bring us great joy and happiness, but don't. He was able to sort of be this truth teller right in the beginning. Like, let's set the stage for the fact that many of the things that we have been told are going to bring us happiness and success aren't actually going to work out the way that we've been told. And it was really fun to be able to bring that to light early on.
And what are some of these, let's call them myths, that we have been told that don't necessarily work out in the way we've dreamed up that they will?
A lot of it has to do with validating ourselves according to others' standards. So, money being a very common one, like how much money we earn, or how much, what our net worth is, or how much we have in crypto. I mean, you name it. We base our value on checking these boxes. When we really stand back and question those assumptions, we realize that they have no meaning other than the meaning that we're giving them. And for many of us, we give them a ton of meaning, but we never question why we've given it so much meaning.
He says in the book that the first big mindset shift that Maya, the coach, had him work on was to replace guilt and shame with self-compassion. The guilt and the shame that we surround ourselves with when it comes to money or taking time or spending on something that our heart really desires can be so burdensome and weighty. Talk a little bit about that shift from guilt and shame into self-compassion.
This one has been huge for me, I'd say, especially over this past 10 years of being a business owner. The place that I wanted to arrive and took me time to get to was understanding that I am truly doing the best that I can in any given moment. I am doing the best I can in any given moment. And the reason I know that is that's what happened. There's no judgment. So, how we get there, I think it takes time. It didn't just happen for me overnight. Like, of course, Leisa, give yourself all, the benefit of the doubt and trust that it's okay and you're doing your best. Even just picking that as an ideal. And then every time something doesn't happen, or you think, oh my gosh, I made a mistake, or I really wish I hadn't done it that way, then it's our job, and this is where mindfulness comes in, to be able to catch it in that exact moment when judgment would have kicked in. And instead, you're treating yourself like you would treat your closest, bestest friend. And you're like, I love you. I see you. I don't expect you to be perfect.
Leela gives Mirabel a message where she says we have to give ourselves grace and stop being so punishing. A really important part of the book that I loved that you put in this relationship between Mirabel and her husband. We all have someone in our lives that is going to tell us, you really need to watch what you're spending, or we need to budget. And it might be a parent, it might be a spouse, even one's own children constantly saying something about how the money is spent. And that creates even more guilt and shame if we're not careful.
This was definitely an organic experience that I noticed had some themes. My husband and I have been together for a very long time, since 1987. This relationship that Mirabel is confronting of feeling restricted and feeling like he's got this power over her and she's not able to do what she wants to do with money was really important, because this had been a theme that had shown up in my relationship with my husband, but also I had noticed this come up over and over again over the years with clients. Now, keep in mind, it's not always the same dynamic. It might not be the way that it's positioned here in the story, where the guy is the one kind of saying, hey, this is what we have to do, and the gal is going along with it. Dynamics can be different. I really wanted to show what not just happens inside of the relationship, but the impact it has on the two individuals when they play these roles for each other. The dependency that can happen, the lack of agency that can happen. This is one of the common themes as a money coach over the years, is that I see people struggle with taking their own personal responsibility inside of their relationship with money. And instead, other people in their life are serving that role. Or it could even be like the government. I mean, it could be so many different sources. But what I wanted to make clear is that if we really want to grow up and have a greater level of abundance in our life, it's going to start with us stepping out and taking responsibility and pushing back against those who might not understand how important this is in our own evolution.
I like how you brought in that it could be even an outside agency like the government, and even it could be our own inner talk that takes place, that is the voice of someone that's not even in the room, or just simply the beliefs that we have gotten caught up in. How do you deal with the inner talk?
For me, the most important thing I've done has been learning about the intuitive voice inside and making sure that I have a really clear understanding of how it operates within me, how it communicates to me, and how I can navigate life so much more effectively by being in touch with that intuitive voice. it isn't always that way for other folks because, they might not have been on for me, 26-year journey of trying to make contact and embrace it. If we don't touch into the pure emotion inside of us regarding our experiences with money, we are likely to not have the kinds of breakthroughs in our mindset that we want.
As Mirabel discovers the 8 money catalysts, you'll feel your own transformation beginning. Without struggle, you'll release the invisible chains linking money to love. You'll free yourself from financial codependency. Finally, you'll feel worthy of keeping and attracting more money. You'll learn to make decisions from a place of abundance, not fear. This will create a future of wealth and joy without sacrificing today's happiness. Leisa's journey is marked by an unwavering commitment to personal growth. Central to her philosophy is the conviction that abundance is an attainable reality for all. The Money Catalyst, the fast track to wealth, freedom, and living your best life. For the free gifts, visit wealthclinic.com/vision and also visit moneycatalystbook.com. Leisa Peterson is dedicated to transforming millions of lives through heightened financial consciousness. As a financial intuitive, strategic advisor, author of The Mindful Millionaire, and her upcoming fictional parable, The Money Catalyst. I want to invite you to the 1111 Collective. You can go to 1111mag.com and register there to be informed about all the shows, the new 1111 magazine issues, and to keep in touch with everything that's happening for your own personal growth and evolution. You are not on a journey, you are the journey. We'll be right back after these messages.
Simran is an award-winning author, publisher of 1111 Magazine, powerful speaker of wisdom, and a life mentor. Find out more at IamSimran.com. Now, back to 1111 Talk Radio.
Do join my Substack to be informed about all the shows, the new 1111 magazine issues, and to keep in touch with everything that's happening for your own personal growth and evolution. My publication is Beyond the Illusion, and you can find it at IamSimran1111.substack.com. That link is in the bio description. Receive all of the 1111 magazine issues on audio as part of that, in addition to the weekly prompt, inquiry, contemplation, and meditation that I provide to all of the subscribers on the annual membership. Meet Mirabel, who on paper has it all, the career, the house, the relationship, the lifestyle. Yet like many of us, she senses a deeper calling, a whisper of possibility that won't let her rest. Her journey mirrors the questions you might be asking yourself. What if there's more? What if the life you imagined could become real?
What I knew needed to happen, because this is what has to happen when I work with people, is that if we don't touch into the pure emotion inside of us regarding our experiences with money, we are likely to not have the kinds of breakthroughs in our mindset that we want. The book is deeply emotional. It activates emotions. My hope is, just like I see with the people I'm working with, if we can get to the emotion, not the thinking, oh, there was this, and then there was that, and then this happened, and then he did this, and then she did that. It's like, no, 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 no. Let's go into the emotional experiences that you're holding on to as it pertains to these topics that we're exploring. Hence why the book is also a journal at the same time. I want to have people read an emotional scene and then answer the questions while they're still inside of that emotion, activate it for themselves so that they can start to see there's so much more going on here. And there's also a lot of room to let go and surrender, like you said.
There is an easy way to identify with Mirabel as she goes through her journey, whether it is the heightened states of remembering being in Paris and the sense of freedom, or when she goes into that critical voice. And so that is powerful to take individuals through the different dimensions of themselves through this. The mind is logical and rational. We crave that predictability, control, and hard data in order to make us feel safe. So, how do we distinguish from the critical voice into the intuitive voice that's asking us to make a shift?
I write about this in The Mindful Millionaire. First, there's the emotion related to something. And then beyond the emotion, there's this feeling sense, which is when we get into the intuitive aspects of ourselves. The idea is to get in touch with whether it be memories or feelings or experiences so that you can become your own catalyst. One of the most important things that we can do for other human beings is to see them and then allow someone to feel like they are seen and felt and understood. And my impression is, as a coach, as an author, is that when people feel like something they're reading, in this case, is allowing them to be seen and felt at a really deep level, it starts to clear out all the blocks, the obstacles, the noise, and allow us to touch into who we really are.
You do have questions at the end of different sections that are quite powerful to allow individuals then to deepen more into themselves in regard to some of those responses. But even in the dialogue, there are moments where I think would bring pause for an individual. And one example is Mirabel and Lawrence are talking. They're talking about abundant living, and she replies, I don't understand what abundant living really means to me. I wonder if most of us have taken the time to really know what abundant living is, or what aliveness is, or what really matters and has meaning to us. Is that something that you think is an organic process that unfolds?
Even in writing this book, I've noticed that every time I go back to it to edit it or to understand, I'm looking at it from the perspective of in this moment, whereas maybe a month ago I was in a different moment. And so what I'm noticing is that abundance changes, like your perception of abundance changes based on obviously like what's going on in the moment. If you're anything like me, it keeps expanding based on your awareness to it. So the more you sit perhaps and contemplate, like, what would an abundant life look like for me? Things start to come. And then what happens is you start to play with that in your life in various ways, magically sometimes. Like you're like, oh my gosh, this is different. Or I had a different conversation that seems more elevated. You don't even realize maybe it has something to do with that contemplation you did a few days ago. I think this is the natural state of our being, that we actually want to grow and grow and grow from a place of abundance. And it would be the contrast to what I think we often do in the life that we live, which is grow and grow and grow in forms of scarcity. It's going to look different for each of us. It's going to be different in the moment for each of us, but it's a really fascinating aspect to bring into our lives that we may not be spending enough time thinking about.
And we watch Mirabel move into this sun rising of empowerment where she's starting to connect these dots and make these changes and want more for herself and want to be curious. As she's doing that, we see Ethan push back. So often when an individual in a relationship starts to change from who we believe them to be, the first thing that goes through the other partner in the relationship is that sense of fear. What's happening here? And we can't do that. And so you get this very quick reaction from the other side. In that moment, something made her stand for herself and say, I need to do this for me. That's an integral step towards change.
Yeah, very much so. It was empowered through Leela and then through Lawrence. She's like building some strength up inside to be like, I can do this. I'm going to break the pattern of the past of just toning down, pulling back, not saying what I really want to say. I can relate to this. these are things that I have really had to push myself in many different aspects of life, of saying what I want to say and being the person that I want to be. Maybe that's just my story, but I came from a lot of trauma. And I think that was also it, as we get into some of the trauma that had caused Mirabel. She takes a stand for herself. And then as she starts to ask these questions, she starts to see how things that happened when she was young are playing out in these dynamics, which then gives her even more strength to keep going.
And as they progress through that conversation, we find that Ethan is really just wanting to protect them. He's worrying. What does that say about their money story and the growth that is now standing in front of them?
Well, yeah, he's thinking that if I control what's going on, we'll be more successful. She's going along with it, but at this point, she's questioning those assumptions. The idea of protection, of control, we're going to almost shrink. You can even feel it with the word when I say it out loud, like control. Control is a very limited perspective of the universe, if you will, like the idea that you're in control of everything that's going to happen to you. There's a thought of control, and what is wanting to emerge is something outside of that. But the tension between them is real. And like you said, when one partner starts growing, and we have a joke in our home where we'll start to bump heads, if you will, about topics or things. When I'm going through a big growth spurt, I'm almost certain that there will be a moment in his mind where it's like, oh crap, like she's doing this again. And we've done it so many times, but I'm still sure that he's like, oh, even writing this book, because he was reading it and then giving me feedback, it led to some huge breakthroughs in our relationship. Maybe that's the reason I wrote it. We can joke about it. What's happening is, as I'm changing, or as the character Mirabel is changing, our partner or our family has to release their degrees of control in order for us to really blossom in the way that we want. And that may be done at first by like butting heads, but eventually you hope that the other person's going to be like, oh, something magical is happening here. And that doesn't always happen. But I wanted to like really bring this out because we have gone through this so many times. And I think that where relationships can really get stuck and hit points of lack of growth is when partners don't understand that this is a very natural, necessary part of being in a long-term relationship, that you create space, even when it's uncomfortable, for the other person to go through expansion. And ultimately, even though my husband might be like, oh crap, I think there's a part of him is like, okay, I've got a choice. I'm either going to fight this or I'm going to go along with it. And I think he knows that if he goes along with it, he's going to probably be a lot happier as a person when we get through the whole thing. So he sees it, but not everybody's been through it as many times as we have. So back to the story, this is like helping you kind of rehearse and think about what you might need to do in your own relationship when you start expanding and somebody pushes back.
That's so true. I love the analogies that you're presenting throughout the book, because you do take individuals to all manner of scenarios, including not just what this means to an individual in their life centered on their identity and their story, but you then introduce Tanya, who broadens the lens for Mirabel a bit, helps her get a little bit outside of just her circumstance. Speak to our personal consciousness around money and the growth that we are here to do, and how that threads to the collective consciousness around money.
Well, it all starts with this idea or hypotheses or, spiritual understanding that we are all connected, and that the more we can understand and embody this awareness, the more I think happiness and joy we can feel in our life, because we're resonating and vibrating with the truth of the fact that we're on this planet together. But this character, Tanya, comes in to question even more of the assumptions that Mirabel has, because, again, this is a bit of me. I get really excited about ideas and I'm like, I'm going to change the world. It's going to be awesome. And unfortunately, in that moment, I may be completely focused and fixated on only my circumstances without including others. And she's kind of done this with, with Ethan, and now she's doing it with Tanya. And Tanya is there to be like, okay, girlfriend, I love you, but you are still looking at this from a limited perspective. Like, she's bringing her into the fact that there's scarcity showing up, even though Mirabel's thinking that it's all about abundance. And she's like, okay, let's expand your frame of reference. And side note, to folks, because there's always a story underneath the story. And when I was writing this book, I was workshopping it with people in my community. It wasn't even supposed to be a fiction book. Like, it was going to be a nonfiction book with a little short story, but people wanted the story to keep going. And so I was writing it real time with a group of individuals. And along the way, what I noticed, it was more myopic at first. Some people were responding to it really positively, maybe white women like myself. But others felt like, well, you have money, Leisa, or you have success, or you're, this person facing it this way. Like, what about me? And so I got my own awakening in the creation of Tanya, because I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is a we thing. How do I make sure? And fiction is different than nonfiction. A reader needs to see themselves inside of the characters. And what I realized was that Tanya was coming in and being created to help make sure that no matter who you are, there's an opportunity for you to see yourself at some level in this book. Even if you disagree with what Tanya is saying, you're still going to have an opportunity to sort of have that conversation with yourself.
There can be a relationship to the voice that's there. I love that. There's a paragraph in the book that I think is probably a conversation that many individuals have inside of their head. How can you be so focused on your own fulfillment when you have duties to your family and work? A harsh voice within her demanded. Your husband is struggling. Your mom has money problems. Your team is failing. And you're worried about enjoying life more? Selfish. Let's talk about being selfish.
Yeah. That's the voice that comes in, or maybe that shows up, because people tell you that, but that's a form of resistance, isn't it? That, oh, I need to be taking care of everybody else. But I think the reason I wanted that to be there, and I felt like it was so meaningful, was, again, I want folks to hopefully understand that if they feel that, then they're not alone. And also to welcome this idea of permission. Can you give yourself permission when no one else might be giving it to you? Permission was something I explored in the Mindful Millionaire too. And so this is a form of bringing that conversation in. Like, here's the voice. What are you going to do about it? And she has to sit in that discomfort and decide, I'm worth moving forward without this constraint.
And then we move into her, Mirabel, being coached by Maya and being introduced to the 8 catalysts without giving away too much of the book, allowing individuals to go access it and discover these catalysts for themselves. Would you share one or two of them, or how these get presented initially so that they become these activators and catalysts within the reader or listener as well?
I was trying to take a very organic process that I think we all go through when we're engaged in transformation, and then create the story around these phases that we go through. And so that's what's happening for her. One in particular that has gotten folks really, really excited. By the time she meets Maya, what's fun is she realizes that she's actually not just at the beginning, she's actually in Catalyst 2, that the beginning of her journey has brought her to, where she's at. But pretty soon after that, she is able to enter into a greater understanding of two different worlds. One is called scarcity, the other is the abundant world. It was so fun to put this together. I think that many of us have a sense of like what it might feel like to be scarce or feeling scarce in our body or in the thoughts that we have, or and then also like there might be moments in our life where we're like, oh, this feels abundant, or this, I really feel, this sense of joy and purpose and meaning in this moment. But what I did was I took like all those thoughts in my head and what people have shared with me and created like a world. Like imagine that you live in this world called scarcity, and this is what that world looks like. Now, what's kind of frightening is that's probably more like the world that we live in today. And so it's calling things out like just really, really clearly for people to be like, okay, I am never going to forget this. Like, I get it. And then as part of moving through this catalyst called unearthing the abundant world, first we go to the underworld and then we come out and we see what this abundant world could look like. I don't know about you, but I feel like I need to read The Abundant World like on a weekly basis because it inspires and gives me hope that we can have this at some point in the future in the real world. But even if I create it in my mind and my understanding in my body, right, embodiment of this, I feel empowered to create it in the world through my actions. That's one of the catalysts.
I love the play on words with scarcity. That was just, it gave me a chuckle and something profound for many individuals. And every time they think of the word scarcity from now on, that idea is going to ring in their heads and hearts in a way that will be a shifter. And the word awake is something that in some spiritual and personal growth circles has been misshapen and distorted. I love how you utilize awake as a process, but even more so as something that allows individuals to calm their nervous system and to get grounded and centered in every moment.
I think that the awake concept keeps showing up over and over again, but it morphs and it changes depending on the situation that Mirabel finds herself in. But I wanted readers to have a practice that was really simple and easy to return to again and again, because we live these lives that are really busy and we have challenges and obstacles and difficulties. I wanted to show what it could look like for Mirabel and how Maya is like, okay, let's use this process again for this situation and then for this situation, but it's different each time. I've been teaching these different mindfulness practices for years. And one of the things that's difficult for many of us as teachers is how can we simplify what we're teaching down to the easiest, most basic level of practice? Because if it's too complicated, nobody's going to do it, on a regular basis. So that was also playing in the background of my mind of having this. But the other piece is it's reminding us, because awake stands for awareness, willingness, appreciation, kindness, and embodiment. We are rehearsing just like a play. We're practicing for the stage of life. Every day, we're just practicing. And ultimately, the embodiment of who are we going to show up to our life as is really, really important where it all matters. Because, if we can embody what we're learning, if we can put it into practice in our relationships with our money, with all these different aspects of our lives, we're going to be a lot closer to the fulfillment that we're seeking.
We're living in some very provocative times that challenge. Yet I feel that these types of experiences and times serve as the catalyst for us to look at ourselves, our lives differently. I'm noticing there is a trend among authors to bring individuals away from a more materialistic attainment approach to life into one that is more fulfilled.
I want to make transformation with money more accessible. I picked a character. My daughter is 27. This character is 34. Like, I was definitely thinking about younger people. What would happen if I had come in contact with all of this information? I'm 58, right? If would have happened in my life if I had found this at 30 and questioned assumptions? It would have saved me a lot of time and trouble and difficulty. The source of inspiration is helping people no matter what age they're at. But I think having that beginner mindset helps whenever you open a new book, like, I'm going to just see what comes. Making transformation with money, with scarcity, with abundance more accessible than what oftentimes has happened in the past, where we'll read these money books and they're dry, they're kind of boring. They have to take on, if they want to not be boring, they kind of take on this otherworldly, fantastical thing that may not appeal to everybody. I don't know. They don't work as well for me. I feel like if somebody's saying something that's just so outside my realm of possibilities, it doesn't resonate. So I wanted to make it like basic and practical, and yet also have some magic inside as well.
From the book, The Money Catalyst, The Fast Track to Wealth, Freedom, and Living Your Best Life, Maya smiled. I understand, and I'm curious, what have you discovered? I've realized something profound, Mirabel began, her voice steady with newfound certainty. Abundance isn't about playing it safe or hitting the numbers. It's about refusing to live anything less than the life you know is possible for you. Leisa Peterson is dedicated to transforming millions of lives through heightened financial consciousness. As a financial intuitive, strategic advisor, and author of The Mindful Millionaire, Leisa's journey is marked by an unwavering commitment to personal growth. Through her unique blend of financial expertise and mindset coaching, Leisa empowers clients to master their finances with clarity and confidence. Her signature approach goes beyond numbers, instilling a strategic money mindset that fuels growth, boosts confidence, and enables people from all walks of life to make empowered, forward-focused decisions. Leisa Peterson, The Money Catalyst, the fast track to wealth, freedom, and living your best life. Visit wealthclinic.com/vision for free gifts. And also go to moneycatalyst.book.com. Thank you so much for spending time, for allowing yourself to receive the 1111 Collective on Substack. Again, click the link in the bio description below and join us. Become an annual subscriber or a Master Founder member and start to also receive 1111 Magazine on audio. It is an honor and a privilege to have you there. Until next week, in love, of love, with love and as love, be well.
Thank you for opening your mind to a new reality, your heart to greater compassion, and your experience of aliveness with 1111 Talk Radio. Join host Simran next Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern Time to step through the gateway of conscious living. You are not on the journey. You are the journey.